Thank you all for joining us today, and hope the microphone is working. We're going to start, please, with, well, we're going to have a silent prayer and pledge. So if we can have a moment of silent prayer, and then we'll be led by to the Pledge of Allegiance by Roddy Bergeron.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Ronnie. As chair, I'd like to announce the following before we get started. This is a public hearing. To address the committee on any item on this agenda, please fill out the speaker form to submit your information to the clerk prior to the call of the agenda item, or you won't have the opportunity to speak. Staff assistance is available if needed. Items for submission to the committee should be handed to the council clerk, Ms. Veronica Williams, seated to my left. When addressing the committee, state your name and title for the official record. The 3-minute rule will be in effect, except for our speakers today. No debating or confrontational statements will be allowed. The front row to my left is for media only, and I can see that it's packed with the media. Thank you, Mr. Capps. Food and drinks are not allowed in the auditorium. And please silence all of this, including committee members. Silence your phone or electronic devices. I want to thank our speakers today, and we'll be introducing you in a few moments. Would any committee members like to make any announcements before we begin? Okay. I'd also like to recognize City Council Advisory Liaison, Pat Lewis. I don't think we have any other City Council members. Do you have any announcements or comments?
Well, thank you, Madam Chair. You just made the statement that I'd like to recognize my colleague, Mr. Andy Nakin, is here present.
Oh, Andy.
Mr. Andy, you would like any few words you'd like to say? Have any few words? Okay, thank you.
I'm sorry I didn't see you.
No
Thank
problem.
you for joining us. All right. I think we're ready to get started. Today, we're going to have a historical perspective on the 1992 consolidation that led us to where we are. And so for the early part of our presentation, we're going to first ask Mr. Ed Abel, who chaired the 1992 consolidation, to speak. And gentlemen, to all of you, we'll probably have like 10 to 15 minutes so that we have time. We're looking at a 2-hour window at the most to allow time to talk and then have questions, and we have other business. So we'll start with Mr. Ed Abel, and local attorney, and then we'll have Lynn Guidry second. Lynn is a local architect who served on the parish council back in the days of the consolidation effort. And the second two speakers will be on the 2011 Charter Commission, be Mr. Don Baquet and George Lewis. And so we'll be hearing from you after these presentations. And in the interest of the time, unless there's some discussion from our members up here, I was thinking they could each make their presentation, and then we have questions, unless you'd like to interrupt, because I'm concerned we might get off on one topic and then the time goes by. But of course, we're open. This is a very loose group, so we want to make it where everybody has a voice. So, Ed, thank you for joining us.
Well, thank you for inviting me. Can you hear me all right? Make sure you, if I get to 15 minutes, tell me to shut up.
All right.
I'm told I'd like to hear a little historical perspective on the consolidated government. Before we get to the 1992 consolidated government, some of you may recall that in 1972, City of Lafayette was run by 3 trustees, and the parish was operated by a police jury. The city of Lafayette adopted a home rule charter in 1972, which had a mayor and 5 council persons. and that was pretty successful government. In 1979, there was an attempt to consolidate the whole parish, all of the municipalities. Charter Commission was authorized by the legislature, and that didn't work. About 3 years later, I served on a Charter Commission to review and revise the police jury. And the police jury at that time was a home rule charter. I'm not sorry, I mean, it was a police jury was the form of government, 15 people, nobody was a president, no executive authority in it, and it needed to be changed. So it's better suited for rural operations, and we were getting beyond that in Lafayette. So we did create a charter, and it was passed, and you got a 7-member council and a president. It was largely modeled after what the city had done, because that was, we thought pretty effective. And 10 years later, we had the consolidation charter. Now, any of these charter commissions have to operate within the bounds of the legislation that creates them. And there were some very interesting limitations on the consolidation charter that was used to write the government that was until recently in effect. First thing is it said that here's the language from the statute. It says the people of Lafayette Parish and the people of the city of Lafayette shall have the power to establish in the manner hereafter provided a unified city parish government for the parish of Lafayette and the city of Lafayette situated therein. Such government shall not include the government of any other municipality in Lafayette Parish other than the city of Lafayette. One other restriction was that no plan that we created could prohibit any of the municipalities in the city or in the parish from continuing to annex property, which turned out to be a pretty important issue long term. So those were limitations on the authority that this Charter Commission had. So they said, well, what can we do that might be helpful and a positive step forward? And some of you may recall there were times when you had the parish over here and the city over here, and they couldn't decide what to do about a road that was going to cross the line, and then there were some crazy things going on, that conflicts between the parish and the city. And the city and the parish each had basically the same departments. They each had a department head, assistant, and so it looked like a lot of duplication in these two governments. So it seemed sensible to us that maybe we could eliminate some of the cost if we combine them and let them put the departments together at least, and over time you could by attrition lose a number of employees that you wouldn't need to keep. So we headed in that direction. Also thought if we combine them, instead of having these arguments that they had from two different councils in two different places, that they would have to find a way to come to a conclusion if they're all at the same table. So that was what the Charter Commission ultimately did. We also noted that the city at the time we wrote the charter had about 2/3 of the parish population inside the city limits of Lafayette. We kind of thought that it would continue to maintain its position as, that relative population distribution, but it didn't. And one of the main things that we put in the charter that has been a problem and concerns all of us, I guess, is that the charter says that Lafayette Utility System, which is the cash cow for the city, shall be controlled by the members on the council, the 9-member council, who have 60% or more city population in their districts. Maybe it was bond council or somebody, but somehow or other, they have ignored that part of the charter and allowed the whole council to vote on everything that relates to the, or they're required it, they all vote on everything that relates to the utility system. So, it was interesting to me, frankly. I thought once we passed it, the real problem, the reason that you needed to pass a charter or do something, was that the parish doesn't have enough money to run itself. And our hope at that time was that once we had a government in effect, if it functioned properly and had some credibility, that it would be able to pass some sort of a tax arrangement that would equalize the taxes over the parish-wide, and get rid of the us versus them, city versus country stuff that somehow or other still exists into the 2021. That's a big shock to me. I kind of thought we would see better things than that. I'm suspecting that we did, some good things did happen. Once we passed the charter, we built Community Boulevard, at least. That was a big issue in the election. And that was a positive, and I think has enhanced, obviously, the other side of the river. But the city hasn't grown. See, we elected Mr. Como, who was a police juror all his life, and who was the president of the police jury of the parish government. And he didn't do a whole lot to enhance the city, and was not going to do anything to adversely affect the parish. And it's just by his nature and his upbringing. So the city didn't grow, and we now have, but we saw where the population distribution was such that you could end up with a majority of people elected from parish government, from the parish alone, on the council. So that's a problem. So I don't know if that. So some of our expectations were not met. I was kind of surprised it lasted so long without being amended, frankly. I thought somebody would get after making some serious changes earlier than they did. So now, I guess the question is, if we couldn't afford two governments in 1992, and the growth of the parish and the annexation by the small towns of anything that creates income has probably shrunk the parish government income level from where it was relative to the city 50 years ago or 40 years ago. If we go back to, does it help us to go back to two governments? I'm not so sure what the answer to that is, but it concerns me that we end up in the same spot as we were trying to, the same thing we were trying to fix in 1992. So I'm not sure there's a good answer to that, except increase the taxes. And there's some, I've read some things locally in some of the local newspaper commentaries where that may be the only answer, is to increase the parish taxes. That pretty much covers what I wanted to tell you. I think that's where I was, and that's what we were thinking, and surprise, surprise, it didn't all work out like we had hoped. But maybe your folks can help us get it fixed.
Thank you.
You know?
I see a couple of lights are on. Are these questions or points of clarification? Do y'all want to go ahead and have some questions now? Is that the majority? Okay. Stuart Bro was first.
Mr. Abel, thank you for joining us today. Question on the Charter Commission. Did you all investigate a multitude of possibilities, or was the focus mainly on the consolidation of the city? I get that by state law, we couldn't look at consolidating other municipalities, but was there an effort to examine other possibilities, such as a situation where the city would contract with the parish to provide services? I know there was a technical report from 1991 that examined some of those. Was that on the Charter Commission agenda, or was it a pretty focus solely on the?
Well, I guess I'd have to say no. I mean, we were looking for answers. We looked at what had been done in many other places. For instance, in Jacksonville, Florida, they took the city limits and expanded them to the county line, and so you had one city, one parish, that would be a good result here if you could get there. But some things you can do politically, some things you can't. For instance, I've got a lot of questions afterward. Why didn't you eliminate the police department? Anyway, you couldn't touch the sheriff because he's a constitutional officer, and so we didn't think it was a good idea to eliminate the police department. But we didn't know, we didn't study. To answer your question, no, that was not one of the focuses of our work. We're trying to see what we could do under the statute.
All right. Roddy Bergeron.
Yes, again, thank you for coming today. During the time when the Charter Commission was meeting, there was an idea being floated around by, I think it was the Chamber at the time, that there could be cost savings of up to $5 million. It was like a third-party report. Did the Charter Commission at the time find that those savings were possible?
The savings? I forget the number exactly. I don't know if it was $5 million. But what Alan Aberry was a CPA on the Charter Commission, did an analysis of the two governments and looked at if we combined the two governments and combined the departments. And we had elimination of a couple of one executive and 3 or 4 council people. If you take out all those salaries, you'd save over $1 million a year. And I don't know, it may have been bigger, but it was a significant number. But those things have to happen by having somebody run a place who's willing to hold the line and allow attrition or firing to eliminate those unnecessary jobs. Didn't seem to happen. So I can't say that we acquired that savings. But it was a possibility.
All right, Mr. Pope.
So, Mr. Abel and Stuart, I'm sorry if I'm seemingly contradictory, but in the charter, the 92 charter, an option was left open for small towns to join. I'm not sure about state law. So you said correct.
That is in the charter.
Yes, sir.
And they could have joined the charter. I think one considered, maybe, I forget, maybe Broussard. No, probably not. But there was some discussion, maybe it was Youngsville, I forget, but nobody ever did.
As I recall, it was proposed to the small towns, do you want to consider being a part of the consolidated government? And as I recall, there was a vote. I don't remember if it was all the small municipalities, but the vote unanimously was within these autonomous governments. Karen Crow Scott Dusson, the answer was no, we do not want to participate.
Right.
Never went to a vote of the people, but the mayor and the autonomous councils voted in the small towns, no, we don't want to participate. Is that correct, sir?
That's correct. And it would have been, maybe in 1979, if people had been inclined to do something like that, they would have been able to combine them all, which would be, I think, a better result. But we didn't have that option under this charter, and even though we made the offer, it was not accepted.
Thank you.
Let's see. So just to clarify, there was a vote in 1979 or ish where the municipalities overwhelmingly rejected consolidation. The
Yeah,
original.
there was a 20, the legislation appointed 20 people to the commission, which may have been part of the problem. But it did give it authority to combine all of the municipalities, and it didn't work.
Okay.
So,
Any other, let's see. So Veronica, do I just clear the board? All right. Is that it? Okay. If there's no other questions, Pat, excuse me, Mr. Lewis. Is he able to get on with?
Nothing. There, and now. Okay, I'm on. Okay, I have a question, right here. It's just right here, question. I just want clarification. Mr. Pope made a comment, I just want to make sure I have clarification. When it came to the municipalities, the people voted or did not vote to become consolidated? I just want clarification. Was just the mayors in these little municipalities among themselves say, hey, we do not want to join consolidation, or did it come to a vote by the people in these municipalities?
there was no vote of the people that I'm aware of on any of this. It was simply a provision that we put in the charter because we didn't have authority to force them to come in, but we thought we ought to at least offer, if they would like to join, if they could do a process by doing that.
So when they did not join, it was because of the municipality mayors that say, hey, no, we do not want to be involved in the
I don't think
consolidation.
any of them went to a vote of the people. We were
Okay.
nobody
Okay.
agreed to.
Okay,
to
thank
join.
you.
Just one more question from me. With the benefit of hindsight, would you have supported consolidation at the time, knowing what you know today? And, you know, you mentioned some of the things that didn't pan out kind of as expected, and the inability to control annexations, but also LUS, control of LUS, and population shifts and things that diluted the city's authority to some degree. Are there things that if they had been included, would allow you to support the charter if you wouldn't otherwise?
Well, you know, we were doing the best we could. We thought we'd done a good thing, and like I say, I was really kind of shocked that nobody ever tried to seriously amend it for 20-something years. But there were, I did not anticipate, I thought the city would continue to maintain its level of ownership of population relative to the small towns and to the rural areas. A lot of things like that. To say I would not have done it, you know, we had a job to do. We tried to do it within the bounds of the authority that the legislature had given us, and we thought it was the best we could do at the time. And I guess it didn't work like we'd like it to have worked, but there were reasons, and it could have. And I think that you probably got better opportunities as a larger municipality for government money and stuff like that. I think some of those things were good. And you passed a bond issue to build the community bridge and the Louisiana Avenue connection, and so some things, some good things happened as a result of that election, if not necessarily the charter. But the new council did some things that were positive for a while. And I think if we had elected somebody out of the city instead of somebody out of the parish, the whole thing might have come out a little differently. But we did what we did.
And I have, since we're asking questions, I have one more point of clarification. We, when you talk about we, it was really a good government, business person-led effort. It seemed, just from what I've read, we have a report that all the committee's been given by a Professor Hunter Baycott, and it really talked about the push by the Chamber of Commerce in particular in the newspaper to have a good government type of consolidation of funding and efforts to run government in a streamlined manner. And so that was your, from what you've been saying, and you've talked to me privately about this, that was really the intention, was to streamline government.
Yeah, it needed to be to cut back waste.
Expense.
But the real problem is funding the parish, and it's not getting better, it's getting worse now, so I don't know how you're going to fix that now, but that was a problem then, and it's even worse than that now. Mm-hmm. And if you really kept all of the city money in city and allocated it properly, we may be driving on gravel roads down by my house in the parish, but if you don't, you may have to do something like that in order to get the parish to fund itself sufficiently by increasing taxes. I mean, that's my perspective on it. That's maybe the only answer. But nobody's had the push to do that, maybe just by inattention or whatever.
Anyone else? Mr. Abel, thank you. Are you able to stay?
Appreciate you letting me join you.
Are you able to stay with us, or do you need to leave in case there's any later questions? Are you able to stay?
I could stay where you are.
Okay, thank you. Next, we want to welcome Mr. Lynn Guidry. Lynn is an architect, a Karen Crow resident, and very active, not only as a Karen Crow elected leader, he served on the parish council during the time of consolidation and prior to consolidation. And he's also a Lafayette historian, so anyone that has been a part of Leadership Lafayette has had the pleasure of hearing Lynn talk about the growth of Lafayette, including our flagship Lafayette utility system, our roads. And so I've learned a lot from you, Lynn, about the history of how Lafayette became to be the hub city. So thank you for joining us today to give your perspective on the consolidation effort.
Thank you, Jan. Thank you, all of you, for inviting me. Yeah, if you live long enough like I have, you become a historian, you know, so, yeah. I think I've met many of you through Leadership Lafayette and presentations that I've made to some of you, so it's good to, and some of these guys back here I haven't seen in 25 years, so again, thank you for inviting us this morning, because it's been a great reunion. Talking about how good we were in those days, we're really blowing our ego up and making ourselves feel real good. But and truthfully, thank you. Yeah, as Jan mentioned, I was on the parish council for 8 years. The parish council existed as Ed. I was having a little trouble hearing Ed, and through my fault. I have hearing impairments. I wear hearing aids, and they don't always work real well. But between the police jury days and consolidated government, there was a parish council separate from the city council. We met in the annex building where Conrad Como's office is now. We met in that building. And that existed for 12 years. I was on the council for 8 of those 12 years, so the last 8. And so, you know, probably during that beginning of that last term, the word consolidation was being thrown around, and we were getting more information. We were being courted by people, proponents of consolidation, as well as the city council at that time, and being told the benefits and the pluses, the minuses of it, and everything. And then, you know, it went to a vote of the people, but we were the council, the parish council was the council that was able to put that on the ballot because we represented the parish. The city couldn't do it. It had to be a parish-wide vote. So it was our council who made that call. We were courted, as I mentioned, by various groups of individuals and organizations, and told of the many benefits that would come. And, the quickest, easiest example that was brought up to us many, many times over was at the time there were two mayors, there was a mayor and a parish president. There was a city council with 5 people. There was a parish council with 7 people. So that's what? That's 14 elected people right there. And the plan with consolidation was to go with 1 mayor, city parish president, 1 leader, and a council of 9. So that was 10. So right off the bat, we were going to diminish the number of elected, paid officials by 4. So that was, but it was really the tip of the iceberg. The same scenario was drawn in Public Works, because parish had a Public Works department and the city had a Public Works department. We also realized that, and there were a lot of duplications, not just Public Works. There were a lot of duplications like that. I mean, there was a city attorney, there was a parish attorney, and actually there was more than 1 parish attorney and more than 1 city attorney. So every department was going to be able to diminish their numbers over the years. We were all aware, however, that because of civil service, that some of that wouldn't happen right away, that it would happen through attrition, and that, Public Works may not lose anybody right away, but as people retired, those people wouldn't be replaced. So we understood that. And it wasn't just people, it was equipment, because again, the parish had trucks and equipment to clean ditches and pave roads and all that, but the city had the same or similar equipment, more of it. And so that was another savings that was proposed to us. And I will tell you that I think it worked. That part of it worked. There has been efficiencies. So in your studies and in your questioning of people like me and others, dig into that. It's not been a bad experience. If I could change something, Stuart, I would change 2 things. One, I think the biggest question on the table now is at the leadership level and how our elected officials, I'm going to use the word behave, but I don't mean that in a behave like a child, but how they interact with each other, how they interpret the charter, how they make consolidation work. So I think that we all probably would like to see some changes, some adjustments made there. But the other change that I would make, and I think it's right to the root of it, is that when consolidation happened, there should have been some sort of way to fund the parish. Because the whole reason it happened was we didn't have any money. I mean, we were operating with minimum dollars and with mandated services like you've got to run the jail, you've got to fund the courts. Drainage wasn't mandated by law, but reality tells you you got to take care of drainage. So what was happening in those days is, and I remember very clearly one budget hearing, and Mark might have been at that hearing. We were having a budget hearing, and the council had decided that we were going to try to reduce the amount of dollars in all of the services that we were providing so that we could provide more services out in the rural areas with paving of roads, drainage projects, and so forth. But one of those departments that we were going to cut was the sheriff and the jails. Well, he showed up that night, and I remember very sternly being fussed at by him and saying, you are going to fund me to the amount that I need, or you're going to be in jail. And he wasn't joking. And so we heard that, and of course, and that still happens today. I mean, that has not changed at all. So, we were sold on the idea of efficiency. We were running out of money. It made a whole lot of sense to us. I think the city council at the time could see that, but they also were sold on that idea of efficiency. And again, I'll reiterate, I think that part of it has worked. We all had questions. We weren't 100% convinced that every piece of the charter was perfect. But at some point we said, let the voters decide. Instead of us deciding as a council, let the voters, let's put it out there. And there's some value to that, but let me tell you the negative side of that. On Monday morning, 90% of the people in this parish can tell you what the Saints' score was yesterday. They can't tell you 5% of what happens here or at the council meeting in Karen Crow or Youngsville or Dusson. It's just not what most people are interested in. Crazy people like me are. But, I'm by far a minority. There's not a cross-section of people who really understand how government works. And so when you say, let the voters decide, they're going to talk about it. Most of us are going to talk about it at a coffee shop and listen to the latest rumors. And you know how that talk goes, that the coffee shop talk is all politicians are crooks. They're getting money under the table. Let's get rid of all of them. Oh, and if we're only going to have 10 instead of 14, I'm going to go vote for that. There's going to be fewer crooks. That's a crazy story and not probably, maybe not what happened, but putting it in the hands of people who don't follow the daily operation, don't know how civil service works, don't know how the state law for public meetings works. Putting it in their hands isn't perfect. And so, as you know, it went to the voters, the people decided, and here we are. Is it perfect? No, of course not. And why not? I think for the two reasons we talked about. One, the way that the leaders are elected and how they choose to interpret the charter. And then secondly, there's still no funding for many of the parish needs, and many of which are mandated. As I mentioned earlier, and as Jan mentioned a little while ago, I bring that part of history, but also I'm very involved with at least two of the small towns, Karen Crow and Youngsville, and I keep my eye probably closer on the small towns than on the city of Lafayette. It's just what I'm interested in. I have great faith in the small towns. I think it's the way I've chosen to raise my family, and I think it's a good way to raise your family. It's a good way. It's kind of, I've heard that expression before, it's kind of where the rubber meets the road, whereas in Lafayette, it's a little bit out of the regular people's hands, whereas in Karen Crow, probably most people know at least one elected official by their first name, and perhaps all of them. And so, that's the beauty of small towns. I would tell you that right now, as you probably already know, the small towns are thriving. I mean, Youngsville and Broussard is unbelievable growth. I think you're starting to see it in Karen Crow. The jobs in Karen Crow have multiplied greatly over the last year. And before that, even, we were seeing, not a lot of new rooftops. And so we're seeing, and the same with Scott. Those four especially, maybe not so much yet, Dusson, but it's coming. And I know they're not in the parish, but, Brobridge is benefiting from what happens here in Lafayette Parish. Sunset, Grand Coteau, Maurice, very much by what happens in Lafayette. I say that for a couple of reasons. One is that, Lafayette is a hub city, and those of you in the Leadership Lafayette classes have heard me talk about that. And that was true 100 years ago and 50 years ago and 20 years ago, but it's still true. I mean, here's where the university is, here's where the big shopping malls, the big shopping centers are, and the small towns are becoming more and more self-reliant. But the reason they are is because of the city of Lafayette. It started here. It's that old adage about the golden goose. Well, this is the golden goose, and whatever we do, don't kill it. Don't kill the golden goose, because as Lafayette grows and prospers, so will Carencro, so will Broussard, so will Youngsville. Now, they will prosper in different ways, you know. The other thing I wanted to tell you about the small towns is that I think they could care less about consolidation or deconsolidation. If the end recommendation from y'all is to deconsolidation, Pat and your group and whoever decide to go that way, I don't think it's going to affect the small towns, because A, they're autonomous already. They all have public works departments. They all have planning departments. They all have permit departments. They all have a police, a fire department, you know, so on down. The area where it overlaps a little is drainage. Not so much that the parish takes care of drainage in Carencro, but it should take care of drainage near Carencro that comes into Carencro. So there's an overlap there, but not in providing services, just in, and I guess the same can be said with roads, bridges, you know, those kinds of things. But I think the real weakest partner in all of this is the unincorporated areas. You know, they have no one other than the parish council, who, again, is broke and has to spend whatever little money that they have on mandated services. So there's very little roads being resurfaced in the parish. There's very little ditches being dug. There's very, very little of those kinds of public works type work. So, you know, I'm encouraged. I'm hearing that the current mayor meets with the mayors of the city, of the various city councils. The 6 mayors meet on a monthly basis. I think it's super important if for no other reason, to know what each other's doing. You know, for Carencro to know what Scott's doing, and for Youngsville to know what Broussard's doing, and of course, the big boy, the city of Lafayette, for all of them to know what the city of Lafayette's doing, and how all of that works. I close with just a couple of opinions, and they're worth what you're paying for them. So, but I think that if the mood is to go to deconsolidation, I think that's going to be hard to pass. My understanding is that the parish council would have to put that on the ballot. And I don't know why they would do that. Secondly, obviously, it has to pass. And how it worked the last time, it had to pass in the city of Lafayette, and it had to pass outside of the city of Lafayette. And I think that my feeling is that there are more people who feel like it is working than, especially out of the parish, out of the city. There's more people who feel like it is working than not. So that's just my crystal ball view of the thing. And again, so my parting rhetorical question to you is, what problem are you trying to solve? Is it a problem of elected officials, or is it a problem of the parish not having the funds that it needs? And so please ask yourself that question, because I think changing this whole government, that I think Ed said it, I couldn't hear him real well, but I think he said it. If you went back and deconsolidated, I don't know how you're going to put parish government back together again. I mean, it's harder than Humpty Dumpty. I mean, it's not an easy task. You know, I don't know how you do it again. I mean, you know, how do you split some of the equipment, the trucks, the people? You know, some of the people go that way. I don't know how you would do it, but then you go back to the problem of 92. You know, the same problem we had in 92. And I understand that perhaps the city feels like the burden of that issue has fallen upon them. I understand that. I think there's ways to work that without throwing the baby out with the bathwater. I'll try to answer any questions that you have.
Any questions? Stuart?
If you don't have any, I'll sit down.
Oh, no, we got a whole list of people. I guess my question would be, I mean, you talked about we'd be going back to 1992 if we deconsolidated, but in a lot of respects, aren't we, or have we never really gotten beyond 1992? Because the parish government still doesn't have any money. Well, once Biden's check clears, I guess they'll have a lot of money, but, I mean, to this point, I don't think that the parish has, and the solvency of the parish continues to be an issue and get worse.
Right. Yeah, no, I mean, yeah, no, you raise a good point. I think the only rebut to that, Stuart, is to say that I think because of some of the efficiencies that have been found, through Public Works, through other departments, that it now presents less of a strain on the dollars that parish government has to operate. And so those dollars can be distributed a little bit more. But if we go back, then we've got to start paying a parish president again. We're going to have 8 or 9, or I don't know how many elected officials, council members. So, we would go back. But you're right, the problem hadn't been solved. The problem has not been solved. The dollars problem has not been solved. I'm going to say it a little bit different way. The concept of consolidation is a good concept. Okay? Now, how you consolidate, well, we can argue about that and arm wrestle about it and whatever all day long. I think there's been some things that if we could do it again, we would adjust. I almost called them mistakes. But I think, when we were looking at it from outside, we all had those questions about, well, you really think it's going to work? Well, you don't know until you jump in, And so we jumped in. We found some issues. I would tell you by going back to in other words, if we deconsolidate, I relay that to going backwards. We've lost a lot of time. We've lost a lot of energy that we've invested in this government that we have now. And we go back. And then I predict that 20 to 25 years from now, there'll be another committee that'll be called the Reconsolidation Committee. I mean, how many times are we going to do this? Let's make this one work.
Just one more thing. I will say that if 90% of the parish knows what the Saints score was from the weekend, then we're doing pretty good as a parish.
But yeah.
It's important.
You're right.
Mark Pope?
So let me make a comment first to my colleagues. If you've not read any of the documents sent to you, Roddy sent a couple of very good things. One is from University of Virginia. 2 counties in Georgia were studied, as was Lafayette. The only one, as I can glean from this document, it's an academic study. What did they call it? The synergistic combination, they use their academic terms. But the bottom line is Lafayette was the only consolidation deemed to be successful. And it was based on development. And it was that bond sale that Walter Como did when he got in, excuse me, and lots of money went into roads and bridges. Right. Camellia Boulevard and bridge alone was $45 million. And the other one by Hunter Bacow, excellent article. So now, a question for you, Lynn. We hear the parish is broke. I have figures here from millages. 2018 millages, roads and bridges, $9.5 million. So there are millages going to, quote, the parish.
Right.
So if I could ask you to go back to your time on the council, when you had that road and bridge millage, and there was a parish road, and as you said in part of your presentation, and it went into Karen Crow, could you give us an example about, say it was a $2 million project back in the late 80s. would this parish road and bridge millage be used for part of the road in unincorporated Lafayette Parish, and then that road comes into Karen Crow, and you, as a council member, excuse me, negotiated and dealt with your colleagues on the parish council to spend some of that parish road and bridge millage inside of Karen Crow. Did that happen?
Right, yes, yeah, we did. In fact, I'll give you a real case example. We had money for drainage. Beaubas St. Cooley, those of you who are familiar with Karen Crow, starts out in the unincorporated areas, comes into Karen Crow, then goes back out into the unincorporated areas, and then into the Vermilion, sort of northeast of Karen Crow, northeast of Karen Crow. And so it was one of those, Mark, where we needed, we had some money, but we didn't have enough money to do the whole thing. So we put up the money to do the unincorporated parts, and then the city of Karen Crow did inside of the city. And there was a third party, and it may have been the Corps of Engineers that had some dollars available. So, with it, we had enough money to do it. It didn't get done because we couldn't get the right-of-ways. We couldn't get, we would have had to expropriate, including people's homes. And so it didn't happen. Hindsight is 20/20. I wish we would have done it, because like most parts of the parish, Karen Crow's had his flooding issues over the years. But yeah, we would work with the municipality, and mine happened to be Karen Crow, in trying to work with, with their dollars and parish dollars. Go back in that time too, and before I was on the parish council, I was on the city council in Karen Crow. All of the municipalities are prospering today, but if you go back 30 years ago, that wasn't really was not really the case. I mean, Youngsville was what, 2,000 people? In the 2020 census, it's going to be closer to 20,000. I mean, tremendous growth there, as we all know. But even, Karen Crow, Scott, were 5,000, 6,000 people each, and there wasn't a lot of money there either. I mean, we didn't, what drives government is sales tax, right? And so, if you've got a little mom and pop grocery store in Karen Crow that generates some sales tax, and maybe a mom and pop lumber yard, but then here comes Lowe's, and they build in the city of Lafayette across the highway from Karen Crow, and they shut down the 3 mom and pop lumber yards. Well, it has an impact on your city government. There's no sales tax that comes from Lowe's to us. And so all of those, I think I'm safe in saying this, most of those small municipalities were a little bit like parish government. We didn't have a lot. They didn't have a lot. They had some money, like from millages, but dollars were scarce. And so we had to do that, Mark, as you pointed out. We had to cooperate and work together and try to make a little bit of your money, a little bit of my money, and maybe some Corps of Engineers money or state dollars. Then we could get a project done. But those big projects were rare.
Roddy Bergeron.
Again, thank you, Mr. Guidry. First question, you mentioned there were some cost savings from consolidation with, we had duplicate equipment, things like that. Was there any discussion at the time on whether those cost savings were enough to cover the parish's deficit or their money issues at the time?
I don't remember that, no, Roddy, I don't. There may have been, but I don't recall that, no.
And then second question, with the reduction in elected officials from 14 to 10, do you think that cost benefit versus reduction in representation, do you believe that benefited the citizens who had that?
I don't know. That's a great question. I want to say that, well, let me back up a little bit, and I think I can answer your question indirectly by answering it this way. When I was on the parish council, there were 7 of us. Three of us represented mostly rural districts. In other words, like my district was District A. It included almost all of Karen Crow, a little bit of the north side of Lafayette, Mall Street area, but then that whole area north, east, and a little bit west of Carencro. So a lot of my district was parish, unincorporated parish. But there were 3 parish council members whose districts were 80, 90% city. So they never got the phone calls that I got. They got different phone calls, but I would get phone calls about, hey, my road needs new blacktop, or my ditch needs digging, or you're going to laugh at this, but the pig died. Can y'all come bury it? And actually the answer was yes, we could. I mean, that's a whole other story. But my friends on the parish council who were representing city districts weren't getting those calls, And so, in a way, the city districts on the parish council were being served by the city council who met here. Well, actually, in that other room over there, this room was added up. But they met here. So, in a way, those districts were being covered twice. They were being covered at the city level and at the parish level. But I think most people, if they had a pothole in their street on West Bayou Parkway, they weren't calling the parish guys, they were calling their city representatives. So I'm not sure if that answers your question. I mean, you could make an argument that 20 people could represent more people better than 10 people could. So I guess there was some loss, other than, I don't want to say some of my friends on the parish council weren't doing anything, they just weren't doing the same things that we were doing.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Catalan?
Earlier in your presentation, you stated that the mayor president and the mayors of the 5 smaller municipalities meet and talk and discuss about what's going on in their cities.
Yes.
In terms of hierarchy, where is the mayor president and the 5 other mayors of the smaller municipalities?
You mean within that group, who's the king, who's the...
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. I'm not sure, because I haven't sat in on those meetings, but from talking to the 2 mayors of the small towns that I'm close to, it seems to be more of a, they all sit around a table, have coffee. There's no one sitting at a meeting like this. It's much more casual. And I don't think there's a king. There's not someone leading the meeting.
Because that's something I'm not understanding. If he's the mayor president, all 5 smaller municipalities and the city of Lafayette, all 6 municipals in Lafayette Parish is within the parish. We are all one parish.
Yes.
He's the parish president. What is his jurisdiction? He has no say at all in his other 5 smaller municipalities.
Well, and you're right. Yeah. No, you're right. I mean, on a very limited basis. For example, I mean, I guess you could, I know there's a library board, for example, but I guess ultimately the mayor president is the guy who's who overrules a bunch, who rules over a bunch of different pseudo-governmental agencies like the library board, Bayou Vermilion, the airport commission, LIDA, we could name a dozen others. Mm-hmm. So in this case, Josh is that person, and those entities have places in Carencro. We have a library there, we have, so forth. So, as far as the mayor president over coming to Carencro and say, y'all need to blacktop Lynn Gidry Street. Mm-hmm. Well, my mayor would say, there's a door, I mean, he can't do that, and you're correct. But it becomes fuzzy about where that demarcation line is, where their authority ends on those kinds of issues.
Because it seems to me in the unincorporated areas, funding is a problem. And it's my understanding that funding comes from consolidation, City of Lafayette coffers. If you have, for purposes of this conversation, let's say 1,000 acres out in the Carencro area.
Right.
That's in the unincorporated area. Why can't Carencro fund those roads? Whatever improvement it is, if it's replacing the bridge or blacktopping the roads, drainage.
Right.
Why does all of it come from our coffers, the City of Lafayette?
Well, I'll just tell you what the policy has been in Carencro ever since I served on the council. It's still there, and I imagine it's the same for every small municipality. We won't provide services outside of our city limits.
Okay.
Now, you want to be annexed? Yeah, we'll in time, we will provide you water, sewer. If you have a developer who comes, we'll probably require the developer to blacktop the streets, but if it's built according to our standards, we will then accept them for perpetual maintenance. And then we'll start providing fire and police protection as well. But we won't, or I say we, the city of Carencro won't go outside of its city limits to provide any services, with one exception, fire. They will answer to a fire out in the parish. I think there's some mechanism, I don't understand that completely. I think there's some mechanism to where, let's say we send one truck, we may get some sort of compensation from somebody. Don't hold me to that, but as you know, there's no fire stations out in the rural parts of the parish. And so I think everybody is kind of joined together and say, look, let's work together, let's go, Scott, you send a truck, Carencro will send a truck, City of Lafayette send a truck, let's get the fire dealt with. So I think that's the only time that I can think of where where the City of Carencro would actually provide a service outside of the city limits.
Is that it?
Well, Mr. Guidry, in your wisdom, what would you say, or what would be the answer to solving the funding problems for the unincorporated areas of Lafayette Parish?
If I knew that, I'd be governor. But, I mean, the crazy idea is taxes, right? But, who wants to put that on the ballot? And B, I mean, unless it's recreation, it's probably not going to pass. So that's the dilemma we all face. There's been all kinds of hypothetical responses, like the 6 municipalities ought to annex the rest of the parish, so there is no more unincorporated areas. The problem we have, that I have with that, I think the city of Carencro or every municipality would have, is that the fire rating for those municipalities would go down. So I'm not sure what Carencro's fire rating is, but let's assume it's a 5. And then we annex the rest of the northern part of the parish that doesn't have, it has water, but it doesn't have fire hydrants. In other words, it's a water line this big, not a water line that big to fuel a fire truck and to fuel a fire. And so our fire rating in Carencro would go from a 5 to maybe a 7 or 8. That raises my insurance rates and everybody in Carencro's insurance rates. And election time comes around, the mayor, that's the mayor who allowed this to happen. I'm not going to vote for him. Somebody would run against the elected officials on that platform.
Right.
And so I think the fire rating is one reason why the super annexation doesn't work. But the other thing is, it doesn't really solve the problem, does it? It solves the problem of who digs the ditches and who resurfaces the streets, but it doesn't solve the problem about funding the jails and the courthouse. So I wish I had that answer, Joe. I wish I could tell you, man, you know, this is so simple. I don't know why nobody ever thought about it.
Okay.
But no, I don't know. I wish I did. But I think the answer is within consolidation, because I think, as I stated earlier, I think the concept of consolidation is a good one. How we dot the i's, cross the t's, a whole lot different issue. But again, for my 2 cents, I hope that we don't go backwards.
Thank you, Mr. Coleman.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Stuart, you had another question?
Mr. Gidry, I'm sorry.
Anyone else?
Lynn,
Yeah, okay.
it would be unfair to say that you're coming to this from a pro-parish perspective or not city, because you're a champion of the city as well. And so I don't mean to phrase it like this, but when we were talking about the growth of the municipalities in the parish, that no growth or little growth prior to 1996 and explosive growth after 1996, part of that being, and correct me if I'm wrong, because I was 10 when Walter Como was elected, but I was still paying attention.
Yeah, okay.
And, you know, the annexations, not all of them, but some of them came at the expense of the city of Lafayette, arguably. And I believe that the Como administration was, to say the least, not bullish on allowing annexations by the city, which allowed a lot of the property in those municipalities, and particularly situated between those municipalities and Lafayette, to get taken in by those outlying cities. And this being a Protect the City committee, we do have a city bias.
Sure.
We're looking at it from that perspective. I mean, isn't that an example of the city, the interests of the city not being well served by this form of government?
The beauty to be able to remember when you were 10, I certainly can't. So I would tell you that before you were 10, those annexation wars were taking place, before Walter Como, before consolidation. In Carencro, the big story was Evangeline Downs, where Evangeline Downs used to be, and now it's FedEx and Amazon. Carencro went out and annexed that, and the city of Lafayette wanted it. In fact, there was a great cartoon in the Advertiser about, there was a caricature of the mayor of Lafayette being ridden like a horse by the mayor of Carencro, and he was, you know, whipping him because, I mean, it was, we thought it was funny, you know. It was, you know, so Stuart, those annexation wars have been around for a long time, and it's about sales tax, right? You're not going to go out and annex a residential area. Why? Because there's no sales tax. There's very little property tax because of homestead exemption. Yeah, the rooftops will eventually bring a business or two, so you might get them, especially if it's, you know, somebody you know, it's a, you know, Miss Swift has lived in Carencro all of her life, and I knew her grandfather and her grandmother, and so we're going to annex her property, you know, that kind of thing. But whether Walter did that or not, let me phrase it a little bit differently. That I think that we've had, counting the current one, there's been 4 parish presidents who I think they're now called mayor, president, or mayor. You might say that some of them favored the parish and some of them favored the city. Is that fair? You know, I mean, could you have one who tried to weigh both? Again, yeah, you know, I am a parish advocate, and I come from that, and I served with Walter. He was our parish president when I was on the parish council. He sued me. He sued me and the rest of the parish council. Mark, I don't know if you remember that. It's a long story. It's irrelevant now. And for the longest time, we really didn't get along very well. But after working with him for 8 years, I learned a lot from him. And what I remember about Walter was that he understood the needs of the small towns because he was from Broussard. He understood the needs of the rural areas, again, because of his agricultural background. But he was a home builder. He was a businessman. He understood the needs of business and the needs of the city of Lafayette. And so I'm not putting the other three mayors down at all, but in my opinion, he's the one who did the best job. I probably have maybe 6 of y'all that are looking at me and saying that I'm crazy, but you know, that's just my opinion.
Mr. Linedecker? Oh, my goodness.
Well, first of all, thank you for being here. You're a wealth of information and knowledge, and I'm sure everybody on the committee appreciates that.
Thank you, Bill.
I guess in your opinion, do you see more positives or negatives in having Lafayette have its own mayor and the same level of autonomy that the other municipalities have?
I think I'd be positive for that. And in fact, I've had this dialogue with several individuals before this last election was held to split the 2 councils. The thing I said was that there were 2 problems with, and it's what I've been telling y'all for the last, I don't know, 15, 20 minutes. There were 2 problems with parish government, or with the consolidated government. One is the city of Lafayette deserves its autonomy. Absolutely. You should have your autonomy. The second one is funding for the parish. And what I wish would have happened in this last election is that both things would have been linked together. Because, why? Because the city voters would vote for that autonomy. Parish, maybe, maybe not, right? The parish voters need the help. And the city voters had very little to gain from that. Actually, they do, but again, that apathetic mentality of the average citizen tells them that, well, why should I worry about cleaning a ditch in, north of Scott? So the 2 items, the 2 issues could have been linked together in one referendum. Then I think we would have solved that funding problem. A new tax? Oh, boy, I don't like the taste of that. But we get our autonomy. Could go for that.
Thank you.
Thank you, Bill.
Just in closing, Lynn Guidry, thank you. A lot of this has been your opinion. A lot of it has been historical fact. And I think the questions that have been coming out have clarified in my mind, the parish president, the mayor president, just has divided loyalties. And the other mayors, to clarify it, they can draw a line as to what city tax dollars will go for.
Yeah.
And our mayor president has got this position where there's money that's commingled.
Right.
And he's got, at times there's a problem if there's not enough money in the bank account.
Right.
And so the other mayors do have that autonomy, and it gives them the flexibility to say, we'll do it next year. We don't have the money this year. But again, just reiterating, the city of Lafayette, and we're just asking your opinion, but we don't have that clear line
Right.
that we can draw
Right.
as
No,
to
I
where
understand.
money
I understand
goes.
the frustration, and I'm sorry it got to this point, but again, I would ask, just be careful about completely undoing 25 years of effort. Well, actually more than that if you count the planning before that. 25 to 30 years of planning and trying to make this work. I hope there's a way to salvage that.
And we're a fact-finding commission. We're not a committee. We are not a charter commission that will be making those recommendations. Mr. Lewis, do you have any questions, or? You're good.
Thank you all.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Okay. And in the interest of time, I want everybody to be aware of where we are. I've got time. I don't know about all the others. I'd like to call up Don Baque to speak, and Don was active in the in the 2011 vote on deconsolidation. Don is a financial advisor, has been a state representative representing the city of
Gadfly.
Lafayette. Huh?
Madam Chairman, members of the commission, I guess you're a commission, appreciate you inviting me to speak to you today. There's been an awful lot of wisdom from both Ed and from Lynn Guidry, historical wisdom. And everything that we try to accomplish, we, the people, is governed by the art of the possible. What is possible? I am concerned that we allowed our government to get to the point where it is today. When I say our government, the charter, we knew over the years that there were some problems with the charter. And when George and I sat on the Charter Revision Committee, there was a problem that we faced with those that wanted to deconsolidate versus those that wanted to fix the charter. And we could have fixed the charter, but collective wisdom chose not to. So the voters were given the opportunity to vote on continuing consolidation or deconsolidation. And I was on the side of continuing consolidation. And the one question I ask, and Ed Abel asked it early in his presentation. The one question I ask is, I went around the parish and talked about the advantage of continuing consolidation. The one question I ask is, what does a government cost? That's one thing that you all have to think about as well. What does a government cost? And people don't want to vote, at least in this situation, they didn't want to vote to fund another government. The general public seems to believe that government is inefficient and less government is better government. And so if you decide that in order to protect the city of Lafayette, we ought to deconsolidate, it's going to be very, very difficult to sell that issue because a government costs a lot of money. So, and one of the things that Lynn said also struck me that I hadn't thought about it, that decision would have to be made by the parish council. That's not going to happen, I don't believe. So what we ought to be doing is trying to say, how can we make it better? How can we actually make it better? One of the things that I'm very concerned about and has made me start to think that maybe deconsolidation might be better is when the parish chose not to vote for increased fire protection. They voted no. They didn't want to fund their own fire protection. Then the parish council came back and said, what we want to do is to take some money that had been dedicated in the create tax and use that for the parish fire protection. So in effect, they said, Baque, you've got to pay for the parish to do their fire protection when they have chosen not to do it. That upset me. That's when I started thinking, well, let me reverse that. I really believe that we're all in this together, that someone who lives on the other side of the parish line, an imaginary line, someone that lives on the other side of the line that isn't in Lafayette City, that person is no different from me. It's not an us versus them. It ought to be an us. And in that situation, that instance, all of a sudden the parish said, or the parish leader said, it is us versus them. Because if we don't vote for it, we're going to take it from you. That upset me. I don't know what the answer is for you all sitting in your collective discussions, but I really believe that we can make the charter a better instrument. I really believe that we can solve the problems. And Mark, I didn't see that article that you mentioned about Lafayette being successful. Think about that. In the country, they're saying that Lafayette is successful in a consolidated form of government, when we're sitting here saying, I don't think it's fair. I think Lafayette needs to have its own mayor. I'm not sure that autonomy means you have to have a mayor. I don't know what autonomy means. I don't know that we are not autonomous, that the people who sit in those chairs on Tuesday night are not autonomous. I'm not sure that someone can't be a mayor president. I know Jeff Daly wrote an article saying the parish doesn't need a full-time person. We can do it with a part-time person. I don't know who you would hire part-time to run the parish, but in effect, that's what we have. We've got a mayor president that's part-time president and full-time mayor. So from a historical perspective, I am challenged to come up with a recommendation if you were to ask me for one. But with that, I'm going to stop and let you all ask questions if you care to.
Stuart?
What were what was the impetus for the 2012 or 2011 Charter Commission?
What was the
impetus for that?
The impetus was really, I believe Joey Durrell was the mayor president, and the Chamber of Commerce was pushing for making it more efficient. If you ask anyone in public office, they'll tell you that there are some things about the charter that needs to be changed. And the fact that it had not been amended over all those years brought us to the point where let's take a look at it and see.
Are there any issues in particular?
The big issue, and Ed mentioned that, was utilities. And how do you handle utilities? And the reason the way it's evolved is because of the bond attorney who said you cannot have the utility, what do they call them? Those 5 people that were running the utilities, they need to have the whole city council or the city parish council at that time go ahead and endorse whatever the Utilities Commission did. I think we could have gotten around that in our questioning of him. I think it could have been structured differently, but it wasn't. And George may be able to answer those questions. He's much smarter than I am.
Is that it? Roddy?
Yes, Mr. Baque. Yes. So you talked about the fire tax a little bit. With regards to the willingness of city citizens to approve taxes in the future, do you believe the current form of government adds or erodes that trust in the citizens to approve new taxes moving forward?
That's a very good question. I'll give you my opinion. My opinion is people vote for things they think will benefit them. And selling a tax is nothing more than going to the people and saying, this is what it will do for you. To just put out a tax and no one knows what's it for, and no one knows whether or not it will improve their quality of life, you're going to find people that are going to say, vote no. What we need is more people that say, we're going to vote yes. We want to be a better Lafayette. We want to be something that we can achieve rather than something that we're just living through. And we have not had a salesperson heading up our government giving us a vision of the future. All of us want more. We want a better life. A better life tends to come with increased income, and government's no different. But the question is, what do you get for your dollar? So it's up to us, the citizens, to change that attitude. We need to be involved, for or against.
Mark Pope?
So thanks for coming, Don. So just, I guess, kind of a statement, and you can comment on it. I think that we as a group, part of what we have to look at is, in the buzzword, I don't know that it's come up today, the buzzword is cost allocation. What money is being spent for, it's basically O&M, operation and maintenance of city government, and what money is being spent for O&M of parish government. So we have to look at that. Going back to Walter Como, what was his cost allocation? What was the allocation of Joey Durrell, Joel Robideau, and now Josh Guillory? And believe me, it has changed over the years. So we need to look at that, and is, quote, city money being spent in the parish? Kind of have my doubts, but we do need to look at that. Also, the charter, City of Lafayette pre-consolidation, basically subcontracting can happen between the then separate City of Lafayette and the parish of Lafayette, but there must be a study conducted, as per the charter, a study conducted every 3 years to look at subcontracting between the City of Lafayette and the parish of Lafayette. I think that's something that we kind of need to look at as we go forward. I don't know if you have any comments on it.
I'm not sure that was a question directed to me.
No, it was just
but
more of a statement. I thought it was timely.
Yeah, there are a lot of things that haven't happened the way they should have happened. Government is never going to be as efficient as we think it should be, but we can hold it accountable. The problem we have, we citizens of Lafayette, I'm a parish resident, but I live in the city. I'm both. Mark, you are as well. I think you live in the city as well. So we have to look at it from both perspectives. There are two checkbooks. There are two checkbooks, a parish checkbook and a city checkbook. Now, how you allocate those monies is up to the council, but you cannot use parish money for city projects, and you cannot use city money for parish projects. Now, how you allocate your payroll is different, and that's what you were talking about with Walter and every person since then. Those allocations have changed over the years significantly because they've had to. But it's still two checkbooks. And until you get to the point where the parish checkbook has more money, you're going to have a problem. And there's not going to be enough money in the parish checkbook to pay for another government.
Bill Linedecker?
Just a quick question. How would you, your opinion, how would you create a steady, reliable revenue stream for the parish?
Well, the only way to do it is through, the parish is limited by sale, taxes on homes. That's where the parish revenue comes from, is an ad valorem tax. And so the only way is to increase. Money's not going to appear out of nowhere. So now, why would someone vote to increase the amount of taxes that they're paying? If they see that what they get back is worth it. That's the only way it's going to happen.
would it ever be a consideration to have the other municipalities contribute to parish finances in the same way that the city contributes to parish finances? Just your opinion.
What do they get out of it? If I were sitting on the council in Karen Crow, I'd say, City of Lafayette or city parish or the parish of Lafayette wants me to pay some more money. What do I get for it? I think some things that I think we should have done, we ought to look at water districts. We ought to look at fire districts. We ought to look at recreation districts that transcend the parish and city and municipal lines and say, okay, if I live in an area that I want a really neat park, what they've done in Broussard in Youngsville is a perfect example. They taxed themselves. They said, we want a superior recreational system for our youth. And they went out and did that. The city of Lafayette, the parish, has no recreation tax. The city of Lafayette supports recreation throughout the parish. I think that's wrong. Why hasn't that been changed? I don't know. There's a lot of things that we can find wrong, that we can fix if we choose to do so. And maybe that's what you all can do in your study, is say, this is crazy. Why are we doing it this way? But you're going to have political will with the elected officials. You know, one of the things Lynn said, I don't want, the mayor's not going to do that because he's got to stand for re-election. When are we going to have political courage and say, let's do the right thing even if I don't get re-elected? Wouldn't that be refreshing?
Anyone else? You good? All right. Thank you, Don.
Okay,
Thank you so much for being here. Our next speaker is George Lewis, and George brings his background as a CPA. He's served to audit the books of government, and I think he's advised in the past on financial issues. George, thank you for being here.
It's nice to be the last speaker because everybody else has said everything that needs to be said. Let me just start off by saying that I have opposed consolidation from day one. Back in 1992, 96, I looked at it as one elected official said, it was kind of like the corner stop and shop taking over Albertsons. And there was no doubt that the parish needed assistance. In the latest amendment to the charter, I opposed that because it was going to create a conflict of interest, which has happened. I chaired the 2012 Charter Commission, and we proposed deconsolidation, but only to the extent that there would be a formal contract between the city and the parish where the city took care of the parish's business. That failed. So anyway, here we are. I think each of you has received a letter already that I wrote to the city council when they appointed this committee. And I know it's kind of a difficult task for you to avoid talking about charter commission type stuff and look at what the charge is that you were given by the city council, which is to determine if the consolidation benefited the city of Lafayette, and also how much or if any of the city's taxes are being used for parish purposes. Let me say that there are two areas I want to talk about. First of these is that something that happened in the 1992 charter was that the requirement that all contracts had to be approved over a certain amount, had to be approved by the city council. That was a strong council form of government, but the main thing is it provided public input on contracts. And I have cited, I think in my letter, I've cited some contracts that maybe were not to the benefit of the city. In the 2012 charter, we did not address that issue, frankly, because I didn't think it was a big issue. But then in the Robodeau administration, they almost gave away our utility system in the guise of a management contract. And at that point, I realized how important approval of contracts by the city council or the parish council really was. That is a charter commission issue, but it goes to the point of the question that you have been addressed as to did the city benefit from consolidation. The second issue has to do with cost allocation. As I understand it, you're to try to determine how much, if any, of city funds are being used for parish purposes. I don't know if any of you watch Ancient Aliens like I do on Friday nights on the History Channel, but they lead off every episode by saying, there is a doorway. Well, there is a document in Laurie Toops's office that details the percentages allocated of various activities of the city to be paid by the parish. I think that number one, you need to get a copy of that document. You need to go through it piece by piece, look at the reasoning behind the allocations that have been made. Too many of them have been made subjectively rather than objectively. And if you disagree with how the allocations are made, then that's part of your report. I was amazed, Mr. Councilman Lazard told me that during budget hearings, he asked Laurie Toops why a certain percentage was so low, and the answer was that's all they can afford. Well, that's not the reason to have a low percentage. I am not a cost accountant. There are different ways to allocate cost. I don't know if you have a budget where you could hire a professor from the university that deals in cost accounting to come tell you if the allocations basis are correct or if there are other ways of doing it. But I think that that's part of what you need to do is to determine if these allocations are reasonable, how much, and is the big question is the parish able to pay for it? I don't know the answer to that. Finally, and I'll be very brief, there's no doubt that the parish needs money. Kind of historically, the parish kind of got themselves into this situation a little bit. At one point, there was heavy reliance on sales taxes. Well, Lynn was right. Anytime that a business came in that looked like it was going to be successful, or there was a shopping center developed where there were sales taxes generated, the nearest municipality annexed them. And so the parish did not get the sales tax money. Then in the late 70s or early 80s, the parish government decided that they were going to enforce their morality on our citizens to keep them from gambling. Do any of you remember that? Mm-hmm. They forgot to look at the Prohibition era and what happened there. But what happened with this is that the people in the parish said, yeah, we don't want gambling in the parish. The parish was getting, as I recall, about $3 million a year from Evangeline Downs, and plus some from video poker. The city was getting about $900,000 from video poker. And all that money went away. Evangeline Downs went to Opelousas, and video poker parlors opened up on the outskirts of Lafayette Parish all around, Acadia Parish, St. Martin Parish, St. Landry Parish. I don't know, I don't object to paying some parish expenses. But I think, as Don said, I think the other municipalities need to do something on that also. How do you accomplish that? I don't know, and I don't think that's one of your tasks here is to figure out how to do that. So all I can say is you have a hard road ahead of you, and I hope you are successful in providing to the elected to the city council the information that they need, and at least for the citizens to understand what is actually happening with the finances of the city and the parish. Any questions?
I have one or two. So based on your financial analysis and your background, and I know you're familiar with the 14 questions we've been given to answer, and they basically boil down to what's in the best interest of the city. Do you believe having a separate mayor would be one component, or are you saying that if the accounting could be clarified and cost allocations, things kept separate, the accounting kept separate, that this could be in the best interest of
I
the city?
definitely believe that Lafayette should have its own mayor. One of the reasons I was opposed to the recent amendment to the charter was that it put Mayor President Guillory in an untenable position. Nobody's out beating the drums for the city of Lafayette. Lynn referred to how Youngsville and Broussard have exploded. Karen Crow is exploding. Lafayette's not doing anything. And in the 2012 charter proposal, we did have a separate mayor and a separate parish president. There were two charters, really. One was the city charter, one was the parish charter, and they were mirror images of each other, where there was this requirement that every 3 years there had to be an independent review of the allocation of cost. It didn't solve the problem whether the parish could pay it or not, but at least it would be an independent allocation. But it did have a separate mayor and a separate president, and I still believe that that's the case to go. Nobody's beating the drums for Lafayette.
Any other questions? Bill, is that from the last? I think that's from the last one. Yeah. Stuart?
Lewis, as the first speaker today to say that you are opposed or were opposed to consolidation, is there anything, in your opinion, that consolidation has done to benefit the city of Lafayette?
Hard question. I don't know the answer. I think that several people have made the comment about the Como administration being pro-parish, and it might have been different had it been a different person. I don't know. I do think that it perhaps caused us to look at the charter, but I can't stand here and tell you that I saw any great benefit to the city of Lafayette from consolidation. That's my opinion.
Mark Pope?
Mr. Lewis, based on your experience as auditor for the city of Lafayette, what is the biggest problem that you can recall with city government?
With city government? You mean in consolidation or out of consolidation?
No, sir. When you were auditor for the city of Lafayette, what was a recurring issue or a problem that you regularly saw, or the one problem that you saw as the biggest issue? It's kind of a historical question I'm asking you.
I don't know that I saw a particular problem. I mean, every government has problems from time to time. I thought that the old city charter operated well. The city was in good financial shape, had 5 councilmen and a mayor, but it was a strong council. And they were able to work together to publicize and promote the city. And so I don't know there was any particular problem. They had plenty of money.
Any other questions? George, thank you so
Okay.
much for making yourself available today. And I've learned a lot today. Thank you. The next item on the agenda that we have is subcommittee appointments. And after listening to all of this testimony, of course, there's going to be more in the upcoming meetings. It's my opinion we need to go ahead and look at who would be willing to serve on a drafting committee, because we are being charged to draft up a report based on what we find, what our fact-finding determines. And I'd like to see if the committee as a whole is ready to discuss that. And one thought that I had was to possibly consider Stuart Grove, given his legal background. I'd like to discuss, I'd like to have a chairman that's able to pull this together. And as a point of clarification, Veronica, the transcripts of these meetings, I know that we're being taped, both audio and I'm assuming, well, the video. Will there be transcripts or written transcript, or is that something we will just pull from the?
No, the staff does not, even for council meeting, we do not do transcript, which is a verbatim type minutes. We do a synopsis, an overview. But if you need a copy of any meeting, even video, we are able to do that for you.
Okay. All right. Is there any discussion from our committee as to this drafting committee? Any thoughts from?
Jan, I'm flattered and happy to serve if that is what the committee desires. I do think that we need to have a drafting committee that takes kind of the bull by the horns and organizes the report, obviously subject to comment, revision, whatever input that the entire committee wants to have, but just so that there is a structure in place to shepherd the process and get it done in an organized fashion. So I think probably 3 members, and again with regular submissions to the committee as a whole for review, and to whoever else we want input from. I would think there are additional people who we may want to say in the government and maybe even some of these speakers today to review and give us their comments.
I agree. And, this was such a wonderful historical overview, but we're about to hit some pretty heavy detail from the administration on budget, and I'm glad George brought up about some help we may need in deciphering information we get. But based on this discussion, I'd like to nominate Stuart to serve over a 3-person drafting committee. Is there anyone that would second?
I'll second.
Why don't we take a vote on that on the 3-person committee, and then we can discuss.
Before we vote, let me ask a question. We're assigning a committee to write the final report?
At this point, to be gathering all the data that's being reported to us at these hearings. But in anticipation, I think as we go along, it's going to be easier to have this organized than to just wait a couple of months and then start drafting.
Right.
I think we're compiling a record.
But I think it wouldn't be to draft a report.
No, it's to compile.
And certainly not to alone draft a report. I think it's important that everybody on the committee have, to the extent that there is difference of opinion in what the report contains, then that's up to the committee to vote on and say, this opinion or this fact is being misrepresented. And, ultimately, we all have to vote on the report to be turned into the council.
Okay.
Is this, were you asking, was anyone asking?
Yes, yeah, I understand now. I just, yeah, you're right. We have some, of those 14 questions, there are many subsets of questions. I'll give you an example right off the top. I need concrete proof in front of me with budget documents that says, quote, "city money is being spent in the parish." I need to see that. To say it is fine, but I need to see what project and from what source this, quote, "city money" went into, quote, "a parish project." It's easy to say, it's harder to outline it and, give verifiable proof.
And I
So,
think we all need this.
Right.
I don't have
Right.
any clue about how the government, is actually, until I hear from the experts.
correct.
I know what I've heard, but I haven't seen it either, Mark. So I
yeah.
think at this meeting, I just wanted to see that we could get organized to where we are compiling the data with someone that's kind of got the eye on the ball about the organizational components of this. And, okay. Do y'all want to discuss other committee members before we vote, or should we vote first on the committee and then talk about who else would like to serve? How would you like to handle this? Okay, so we have a motion and second to nominate Stuart Breaux to serve as chair of our drafting committee. Can we take a vote, please? How do we start with this, Veronica?
Yes.
Joseph will call the roll.
Oh, I see. Excuse me.
Yes.
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 Thank you, Stuart. God bless you. We also need a couple of members to serve on the committee.
Volunteer myself.
Is there anyone else that would be interested?
I'd like to volunteer as well.
Okay. So we have three people, Tina Shelvin, Roddy Bergeron, and Mark Pope.
How many committee members do we have?
We had talked about three total.
Well, I think our problem is going to be 4 is a
It's a
quorum
quorum.
issue.
So I would suggest that you could nominate somebody and you vote them, and that's how we
Okay.
one at a
Okay.
or you could nominate several, and the one who gets 4 votes.
Okay.
So you can put all 3 on the floor at once. We don't need a second. But you can put all 3 nominees on the floor, and whoever gets 4, those would be, or if we get 3, 3, and 1, then the 2 that got
Okay.
3 will be voted on.
So then we have Ms. Tina Shelvin, Roddy Bergeron, and Mark Pope. If we could have that vote.
And you vote by last name.
Yes.
You have to vote for an individual.
We're voting on, we're voting first on Ms. Shelvin?
On all three at one time, you said?
If you want to put all 3 on the floor, all nominees on the floor at once, you can. And then when we call your name, just say one of the names.
Just say what?
Just say one of the names.
Either Ms. Shelvin, Mr. Bergeron, or...
Just say
Mr. Pope.
Shelvin, Pope, or Bergeron.
Okay.
So we'll start with
Ms. Shelvin?
Ms. Shelvin. Oh, excuse me.
Oh, yeah, Bingham.
Kick me. Sorry.
We're nominating her as one?
No, I mean, all 3 nominees are on the floor.
Bingham.
Thank you, fellas. Bye-bye. Apologize. Not really.
So Tina Bingham has 6, Mark Pope 1. So the remaining 2 would be Pope and Bergeron, because none of them got 4 votes.
Okay, so then we go
You
again.
have to go again.
And who begins? Bergeron.
Bergeron.
Pope.
Bergeron.
Bergeron?
And we will all have input. I mean, just to clarify this. So thank you all for agreeing to serve. We have now Ms. Bingham, Mr. Bergeron, and Stuart Breaux will be chair. We can only have 3 because of a quorum. 4 out of the 7 can't serve. Okay. Any other subcommittees that anybody was wanting to bring up today? Any other thoughts? Okay, if we don't have any, I think I'd like to ask a question that Mr. Lewis brought up about, at our next meeting, which is April 13th, we hope to have a report from the administration, which should be Laurie Toops, the Chief Financial Officer, and perhaps Conrad Como. I wanted to get people's thoughts, but this is going to be a money session. And what are the thoughts of the committee? I don't know that there's any budget that we have, but what are the thoughts about someone that can help us decipher information that we're given on the budget? Is there any budget at all for us to have someone help us, or is this like a volunteer position we would ask, or does anybody think we would need that? Stuart? Is that,
Oh, no, I'm.
okay. Roddy?
Make me hot. There we go. All right. It's some clarification. The allocation formula, is that done by a consultant or is that done at LCG? Like, who comes up with the formula?
And Laurie, look, she's waving her hand.
oh,
She is the CFO. She signed in to speak, so, I mean, I don't know what she signed in for, but she could speak, and then she can answer your question as well.
I think she's the expert.
Yes, yes.
I had just turned the meeting on, and I signed in to speak because I was very alarmed by the comments of this gentleman. The cost allocation is not concealed in my office. It is published in the budget book. I'm sure, though, that a 400-page budget book could get a little tiresome as you're looking through it. It's all there, all the formulas, all the allocations, but it probably would be helpful to have a walkthrough so you can understand it. But it is all, it's posted on the internet in multiple places. It's at the public library. It's not concealed in my office. So that is there. And it is based on objective, not subjective factors. You may not agree with those factors. So it's important to look at it and make sure that you agree with those factors. At every budget meeting, I'll go over those factors with the council, and I'll let them know, this is the finance department, this is how it's being allocated, this is the traffic signal department, this is how it's being allocated, and they're free to discuss it and change it at that time. It is done by a professional cost consultant, and they update it every few years. They prepare the spreadsheet, and we implement it in our processes. Also, I wanted to clarify that I have never told anyone that the parish pays a certain amount because that's what they can afford. Those words did not come out of my mouth. Based on the allocation, the person receiving the information may believe that's the answer, but it's all based on objective factors. You may not agree with those factors. That's the important thing. And you have the ability to change those factors. But we like things that are quantifiable and measurable, because it's easy for me to count the number of purchase orders in purchasing and say, well, LUS issued half the purchase orders, so they need to pay for half of purchasing. We like that. We like things you can quantify. It's just a lot easier to explain to the public that you were able to count this. There's a few measures in public works that is based on level of effort. Those always scare me, but sometimes that is what we have to use. But it's not most of the Public Works Department. It's just a few things.
Ms. Toops, how much time do you think you'll need? Are you available on April 13th to join us from 11 to 1?
I'm not sure. I haven't checked my schedule. The end of April is our audit deadline, and we are working on a new budget process. So we're pretty swamped, but I can certainly look at the schedule and see. But probably what would be a good idea is, and I can email Veronica, the pages in the budget book that are the cost allocation, and because it is so detailed, we might have a column with a code, and that code, you flip to the next page, and you can match that code and see exactly what objective criteria measurement was used to allocate those costs.
I can't imagine us moving forward without your direction, on what you're talking about. Are there other people in your department that would also come help us, or is it really?
I'm probably the one, well, I have the most knowledgeable finance department in accounting, purchasing, budgeting, but they are divided. So one person will know this for this reason, the other person will know another part of it, and putting it all together may require my input.
Mark, you had did you have a comment?
I understand it's budget time, Laurie, but let me ask it like this. At some point, would it be possible to look at budget allocations in Part B and doing that, going back how far? We have Walter Coma administration beginning in '96. I think it would be helpful to what we're looking at here. Again, at some point, not asking for it at the next meeting, but at some point down the line, would that be something we could possibly get?
I'm more familiar with what happened since I've been here.
Right.
And, we've increased with technology and the use of print media and all, we've been able to increase the level of transparency over time. Some of the other stuff in the older budget books, I just can't explain.
So it's a tall order, is what I'm asking for. It would be difficult. Is that what I hear you saying?
Right, there would be allocations, but you never really understood what it was 60-40, but why?
Yeah.
And now you see a little code and you can go see why. You
Right.
may not agree with why, but you can at least see what it is.
Okay.
So I can give you percentages, but I can't tell you why.
I know they went up under Joey Durrell. I recall a council meeting, and I recall it being a newspaper article and reading about it, but I can't, my memory tells me 55-45.
Be careful when you look at those allocations, because under that administration, the administration really felt solid about allocating some costs that way, but then at the end of the day, that's when the parish couldn't afford to pay 50% of the finance department. The parish isn't writing 50% of the checks in the finance department, LUS Utilities is. So, but they would allocate it 50-50, but, then you would see there's an extra column. All that's on the spreadsheet, it's all very, very transparent, and it says the amount that the parish didn't pay. But now, it's based on all objective numbers, and there is not a column for what the parish is not paying. At the end of the day, we're paying the same now, pretty much, as they've done since I've been here.
Stuart.
Lori, just to clarify, because I think it would be very, very, very helpful for us to have you explain to us, and at a time of your convenience, obviously, and will you be able to do that? Can we set aside a meeting for the budget, and not necessarily that you have to speak the whole time, but, I mean, whether it be in May or?
Certainly, but what I recommend is that I'm going to send those page numbers to Veronica. Look at them ahead of time.
Right,
I know that
sure.
book's intimidating, but it really, if you had the time to read it from cover to cover, it wouldn't be as intimidating. But just pulling out little sections is difficult. But pulling out the section on the city parish allocation and looking at it ahead of time, looking at the footnotes and all, will lead you to probably better questions.
Sure, and I think that definitely is a better use of your time than to come teach us, I mean, if we have that background. I just meant that, I mean, that it kind of gets to the heart of the matter, and it'd be very helpful for us to kind of get your guidance on how everything is set up.
So you will be checking, though, to see if you can come in April 13th?
Absolutely, yes, ma'am.
And a clarification on who does the cost allocations. You were saying that's an independent process, or it's,
So
how did you do that?
cost, just for your information, cost allocation is, there are a set of federal regulations that we have to follow for grants. So there's cost allocation theories and people that specialized in that. In the case of the city parish allocation, previous before we did the fix the charter, I always thought that they had to approve any allocation of the city parish allocations. But after speaking with our auditor, the auditor said, well, if you have two different bodies, a city government and a parish government, and they agree on a specific allocation, the auditor would be fine with that. It doesn't have to follow counting the number of purchase orders. So there is a lot of room as long as the city and parish both agree on that.
Would that auditor be someone that we should hear from?
I don't know that, I mean, cost allocation is the root of the problem here. So, and there's a broad range for the local government bodies to do what they want to do, to do what they think is fair.
I see.
I think it's a pretty good, I mean, I like that you can count certain things and base it on something objective. So I would always try to steer you into that direction.
Okay. Bill?
Thank you for coming today. I was going to request, some numbers on the LCG cost allocations, but you're going to do that already.
It's already in the budget book. It's in the budget book. I'm just going to point out the pages to you, and I'm happy to answer any questions after. And I have had, over the years, I've had citizens come, set an appointment with me, sit up in there and pull out all the books and walk through that. So I don't mind doing that at any time for anybody.
Okay. Is there a cap on the cost allocation? In other words, 80-20, 90-10, 99-1, there's not necessarily a cap.
No, it is whatever the formula leads it to. So if the formula is number of street signs, that's a real formula we use. Number of street signs, whatever it costs for that division of government, we divide the numbers by the formula, and that's what it is. We don't manipulate it. Now, it was discounted under the Durrell administration for a year or two, but under the Robideau administration, I believe his CPA background just kind of led it to something objective that you can quantify and count.
Okay, and my final question is, once the cost allocation is determined, whichever way it's determined, and the money is deposited in that account, whatever account it is, can the rationale, the reasoning, or the application of the funds be modified? In other words, if the rationale was we need this, and then the money's put into the account, and then it's found, well, we really don't need this, we need something else, can the money be, once it's in the account, can the money be spent on anything?
Well, what we're doing with the cost allocation is the city general fund is the biggest fund that's not restricted. So the city general fund pays for all of these expenses, and the cost allocation is a way to get the money back, mainly from the parish general fund, but there are some other funds that also reimburse the city general fund. We do that one time, normally we do that one time during the budgetary process, and we don't keep changing it all during the year, because you need to balance a fixed target. You can't continuously balance a moving target. There has been an occasion, like right when the pandemic hit and we saw that we needed to make some huge budget cuts. We were expecting a decrease in taxes, so we made those budget reductions. We did go in and amend the city parish allocation at that time, but normally we fix it at the budget process and we don't keep changing it all during the year.
Right. But it would be okay if a department said at the beginning, well, we need this for equipment. And then once, the year goes through, the equipment is not a necessity, well, we need more personnel. They can use the money that's in the account for anything that they deem necessary.
We're not really allocating equipment. Most of it is the O&M related to shared services. Not necessarily to equipment. That's usually purchased elsewhere. What we're allocating is the cost paid out of the city general fund.
Okay, thank you.
Before you go, I know I'm showing my ignorance, and Ms. Bingham had asked if we might want to look at another subcommittee about the budget process, but basically what you're saying, even with the cost allocations, we have a city account and a parish account. And so everything is paid 100% within those accounts. Is that what you're saying?
For the shared services, yes. And let me recommend to you, don't get fixated on the percentage. If it's 80/20. 80/20 is going to be on that spreadsheet. It's all fully disclosed. You see 80 for the city, 20 for the parish, under a certain thing. Scroll down the line, look on that row, and look at the dollar amounts also. It's going to be the 80/20 of the dollar amounts. But when I look at it for reasonability, I always tell my employees, do the calculation the way you know you're supposed to, but then step back and look at the final number. Does that number make sense? Does it make sense that the city, our size, would spend this much money on accounting? Does it make sense that a parish that size would spend that much money on accounting? So look at the percentages, but don't ignore the dollar amounts, and ask yourself, does it make sense? And if it doesn't make sense, you know, those are the ones that's going to jump out right away to you. And what makes sense to me, living in government for forever, might not make sense to somebody else, and that's okay. That's the questions you want to ask.
Because from my perspective, just looking ahead, you know, in my family, if we don't have enough money in our bank account, well, we just don't end up taking the trip to Disney World, you know. And so I'll be curious to hear this. How is the funding stopped when we keep on hearing the parish doesn't have money? So when does this funding stop? You know, insofar as their mandated services when they don't have the funding. I'm looking forward to hearing more about that. I know it's part of the cost allocations, but just from a layperson's perspective.
And you may want a separate group to look at that. Years ago, under the Durrell administration, we did have the cost consulting company come in. I know that the city council and the parish council wanted to do that, and then the pandemic hit. We had money in the budget last year for the consultants to come in and do some presentations. Maybe this is the venue for them to do that. But they can come in and you can ask them whatever questions. But now, knowing that the councils are free to decide on a allocation, I'm not sure if that's necessary, but that is an option.
Okay.
Within the city budget, is there, at the beginning of the budget, is there the total amount of money that the parish has contributing to the budget and the total amount of money that the city has contributed, those two buckets?
In the city general fund and the parish general fund, those are the first two columns on that cost allocation schedule. And like I said, once you look at it, I'm happy to talk to you about it, and you'll walk you through it. And it's not that complicated, but looking at it and having somebody talk to you about it will, you know, the light will go on. And
Okay, I can speak now?
Yes.
Okay, Laurie, I'd just like you to know that I did speak with the Mayor President Josh, and he said that he agreed to allow his director to come and speak with us, not for, 2-3 hours, but a few minutes, maybe 15, 30 minutes. And I'd like the committee to know that I did invite Josh Mayor President Josh to come and have a little presentation to the committee, and he's willing to, but he also said you guys are invited to go and speak with him one-on-one if you would like to have any information from him. Again, he has no problem coming and speak with us, but again, if you guys have any question and you would like to have a conversation with him one-on-one, he has no problem with that. Excuse me. And then getting back to the budget and the allocation, we also had a conversation about maybe perhaps the committee hiring someone to go out, and because we know it's a task, and he knows it's a task, the 14 questions, and perhaps maybe we can hire someone and go out there and ask some questions. It might be a lot easier for you and for the other areas that we may have some concerns. So keep that in mind, that we're going to look at funding source to get someone to go out there, and because I know there's a task, you guys getting ready to start the budget. So with that being said, let's keep all that in mind, these things that I just got through telling you guys about. Because we want this to be a smooth transaction and quickly as possible, and make sure we do it right.
I think that's a great idea.
Mm-hmm.
And also, if I might add, if Laura, the next meeting is April 13th, but if you have a better date, an open date or whatnot, they can call a special meeting and have it then, and you could do your presentation when your schedule allows. Just keep that in mind.
Ms. Bingham, do you want to share your thoughts on another subcommittee for budget purposes?
Well, the goal was to, because a lot of the questions that I hear coming up is questions about the cost and what was happening back in 1996 versus to what's happening now. So I think that it might be helpful for us as a committee to be able to have a subcommittee that can dive into those things a little bit deeper and be able to create a report for us in addition to Lori's kind of testimony about what's happening with LCG and the funding department, but just from the committee standpoint, kind of what we've seen from our perspective and bringing that back to the committee. And, you know, if y'all think that's a good idea.
And maybe if Lori is unable to come until later on, then we can have something from that committee that would be distributed to the members that would inform kind of that discussion. Because again, I think it's probably not Lori's best use of her time to come give a overview of, you know, what's in the budget. So, I mean, to go through how to read the budget and teach us like the kindergartners. So, I mean, I think that that's a great idea.
Any other thoughts?
If I might add one thing, another question that, at the end of the day, when I think about the city-parish allocation and if the city's spending money out of the parish, I usually ask myself, well, would the city do this if it was a city all by itself? You know, maybe the parish is benefiting, but if the city's going to go do it, and it doesn't cost it doesn't cost anything for the parish to use it, how do you allocate that? Does the city just go ahead and pay for it and say you can't use it because you're not paying? Or look at what, in accounting, we look at the incremental cost. What is the additional expense that we're going to incur because we let the parish, we let accounting use the city's printer to print parish checks? How much does it cost to print each additional check? That kind of stuff. So it might not be just a black and white. There may be other variables to look at.
So are you wanting to have a historical analysis? You want to get these old budgets that aren't necessarily online, right? These older budgets.
Right, and I can give you, I did go back, I don't have time to do it for everything, but a few years ago, I did go back and picked selected departments, and I looked at those, so I do have a little bit of that history, but it wasn't everything in the cost plan. So I can get the process started by sharing that spreadsheet with you.
Absolutely, especially like if it has, because some of the things that were brought up was that there was savings in public works and in some of the larger departments that we saw the savings across for the parish and consolidation. So I think that would help to really tell a story of where they're actually really savings.
So if we're looking at another subcommittee, we can't have more than 3. And so we already have one subcommittee.
I would move that we take a vote on whoever's interested in being on that committee.
I'll second that if we can have a discussion about who, would like to be on it.
I'd like to be on it.
Mr. Leindecker? Are you interested? Mr. Catalan?
I mean, I don't mind. I'm the one that brought it up.
I don't want to be leaving out.
Yeah.
Any thoughts? Mark, before we move on, I'm just trying to gauge interest.
A 3-member committee, I'm interested, yeah.
I know Tina was showing her interest. I want to make this fair, you know, as far as who's serving on the committees.
Subcommittees might be a little tough.
Well, I mean, I don't mind letting Mark Pope take this one because I got it the first one, so we can share.
Right. Is everyone in agreement? Mr. Pope, Mr. Leindecker, Mr. Catalan?
Who's going to chair that committee?
Who's,
We could either vote for a chair or they could among themselves.
Tried that once.
would y'all like to elect among yourself, or would you like us to have an election now?
Yeah, let's do it now.
Okay.
Look, Madam Chair, I understand the budget. I think, and I don't know how to say this without saying it. I understand the budget. It's hard for me to say more than anybody up here. I don't know everything. Ms. Toops can tell you that. But, so I'm willing to do it, and I would be obviously objective, and we've already communicated, and we could probably continue that if need be. Because it's probably easier for you, Laura, you kind of indicated that, having one-on-one, you did that with me, and I appreciate that. So yeah, we gotta have to streamline it, I think.
So that would be the three-person committee
Yeah.
meeting, and not just one of the committee members, so. Okay. Any thoughts, Mr. Londecker?
Nope, I'm good with him.
Okay, any thoughts? All right, so we have a motion and a second at this point, I guess, to nominate Mark Pope for chair and serving alongside Mr. Londecker and Mr. Catalan. Take a vote on that?
Could that just be an up or down vote?
Yes.
So, all in favor? Can we just say, is that what you're saying?
Or do we need to? No,
Do we need to do one at a time?
Yes.
Yes?
Yes.
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 Yes. All right.
And I think we were voting on Mr. Linedecker and Mr. Catalan as well.
As members of the committee, right.
So we'll take that vote now for both of them, since there were no others interested.
Yes?
Yes.
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 And as we're winding down, I know it's time for comments from the public. Has anyone asked to speak?
Yes, ma'am.
Wait, Madam Chair, before we go into that segment, I'd like to make a motion, as it were. I think, I'd like to propose more than 2 meetings a month. From the agendas, from Mr. Lewis's commission, somebody said they called us a commission today. I wasn't offended, but we are a committee. I think especially early on, not to say that we can't change that, I think we ought to consider 3 meetings a month, at least until we get past we get to a certain point.
Madam Chair, you guys could consider it, but it's not on the agenda.
Okay.
So, I
We
mean,
can
you
bring it
can't
up.
take a vote on something the public is not aware of.
Okay.
And so, since he brought it up, you can consider it, and then we'll put it on the next agenda.
Okay.
We'll put it on the,
Table it till the next agenda.
yeah.
Okay, yeah, if you would, please. I guess I was confusing next agenda items that was on this particular line we were,
Right.
with possibly meeting 3 times a month going forward. But if you would put that on the next agenda, please.
Okay.
Thank you.
Even if it's just going to be a shorter meeting at times to hear from the subcommittees, we may need that, where we have the public able to hear. Because this can be hard to gather all this data just twice a month. So we'll put that on the agenda for next time. Okay, so now is the time to speak about topics relative to protect the city committee. No debating, confrontational statements, or personal attacks will be allowed. Please remain respectful and professional. For efficiency and to allow everyone to speak, questions should be submitted in writing to the clerk of the council, and there is a 3-minute rule in effect. And now I defer to Ms. Williams.
We do have speakers signed in, the first of which is Wallace Senegal, and he will be followed by Andy Nakan.
I came here in the morning, now it's good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Hey, I want to thank you guys. I'm Wallace Senegal with Concerned Community Activist. I want to commend you guys for trying to fix the charter, what they call it, protect the city. I've been coming to consolidated government meetings since '96 when Walter Como was considered city parish president. It went from city parish president under Joey Durrell administration, I think his second term. He went into mayor president. Joe Rubidoux was mayor president. Now Mayor President Josh Gilroy. Fix the charter was supposed to get us our own mayor, but it didn't go that way. Fix the charter broke the charter, as far as I'm concerned, because they redistrict things. We have a lot of things going on right now. Maybe if we don't want to deconsolidate, maybe you guys could put a study on, amending the charter where we'll have our own mayor, city resident, pay city utilities, and get a parish president, however, from the parish or from the city, however they want to do it. We need our own elected chief like all the other municipalities have. We do need a mayor, and I would appreciate if you guys, would make sure if you can't deconsolidate, if you think deconsolidation is going to be wrong for the city, amend the charter so we could have our own mayor and our own elected chief of police. I thank you guys for all the hard work you're doing. Thank you, Pat, for bringing this up.
Thank you, Mr. Senegal, for spending your time with us today.
Andy Nakam, followed by Robert Benoit. Is he still here?
Mr. Benoit had to leave. He had 2 appointments to make, so he got tied up and had to roll.
Okay, thank you.
First and foremost, I'm Andy Nakam, city resident, District 2. I want to thank y'all first and foremost for being here. Y'all put a lot of time in on this, and y'all be putting a lot more time, and it's very generous of yourselves to contribute this way. Thank you. The reason I'm here is I wanted to kind of relate a little story to you guys and tell you something that I feel deeply on. A while back, I was having some major issues 3 or 4 years ago, 5 years ago, with pain, constant pain in my knees. And my whole body was suffering because of that. My brain, my arms, everything. And so I went to see a physician. And the first thing he told me was, well, rather than cut off the legs, we're going to fix the knees. And we'll make your knees stronger. And we'll get you better and get you whole. Well, it took a knife. It took a lot of work. My whole body had to get involved in it, my head included. And before I knew it, I was walking around, I was pain-free. I was sleeping. I was having great days again. And all went due to the fact that somebody said, you need to fix the whole body. You can't just cut something off. Well, I look at the city and the parish and all the municipalities as one body. Lafayette Parish is not that big. The city's definitely the head, the city of Lafayette, there's no doubt. But every part of this body, Youngsville, Broussard, Carencro, Dusson, Scott, all the municipalities, the unincorporated, are all parts of this body. We have a problem we're faced with. The part of the body is weak, the parish, there's no doubt. To sit here and say, let's cut off the parish, why do we want to do that and hurt the body? We need to fix the parish. You want to protect the city? Fix the parish. That's the way to do it. So many people allude to the fact that the parish has no money. That's no secret. We all know that. The only way to do that is create a revenue stream. The stream was cut off after consolidation when all the municipalities, including Lafayette, started absorbing every profitable business into their city limits. That restricted the parish revenue, their income. So we really, in order to strengthen the city of Lafayette, we need to strengthen the parish of Lafayette also. That's very important. I'm a city guy. I moved here in '57. I lived in the parish, was raised in the city off South College Road when it was 2-lane gravel road. I saw this city grow, and it's done nothing but prospered, even after consolidation. The tax revenues for the city have done nothing but soar. We've sat through record revenues for many years during the Durrell administration. Meantime, the parish revenues have been flat or barely growing. So you can see the effect it's had on the whole parish-wide through all the municipalities. So it's a problem for everybody to solve. We need to put our heads together. We need to come together. And again, thank you for your service and your time. I really appreciate all y'all do.
We turned off the time. I didn't want to beep a
No, I'm good.
council member.
I'm good. I didn't want to go over my time. I do want to thank y'all, but consider fixing everything. Thank y'all.
We're shorting our time.
No other speakers?
No other speakers.
Let's see. Mr. Linedecker?
Yes, I guess before we adjourn, I just wanted to explain the two documents that I gave everyone. The first document was, a request for cost allocations, but I think we've solved that issue already with Ms. Toops. And then the second document is just some things that I thought about over the weekend, and certainly I can only speak from myself, from personal experience, the last 5 years being involved in local government and with discussions of others. So obviously, finances is going to be, pretty important. But I'd also like to look at, some of the effects that consolidation has had on the residents of the city of Lafayette. And I don't think I need to go through all of those, how accessible is a consolidated government, how responsive is it, what's the level of customer service, quality control, legal disputes. I mean, we can all read that for ourselves. But, the city of Lafayette is unique. It's diverse. It's complex. It's got a north side, a south side, an east side, a west side. It has downtown, a mid-city, Vermilion River, major highways. It's home to the university and the SLCC. And I just really believe that the city of Lafayette requires and demands the attention of a full-time, exclusive mayor, a person to champion the causes of the city of Lafayette and to advocate for the city of Lafayette. The city of Lafayette, requires and demands a city council free and unencumbered, a city council that can provide leadership and direction to its residents without interference. The city of Lafayette deserves what each of the other municipalities already has. The city of Lafayette needs its own mayor and a level of autonomy necessary to manage itself. So if you just please consider that as we go through our tasks, I would certainly appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you, Bill. Mark, did you have?
Oh, well, that's from a while back, but good timing.
Oh, okay.
So what subcommittees, we freelance?
Say that again.
Our subcommittees, it's not a quorum, so we can meet whenever we like? Okay.
As far as I understand.
Just double checking.
Yeah. And I'm assuming they will reach out to you and whatever other resources they need to answer.
Yeah, if they could let me know when they're meeting, and I'll just check with legal to see, because it is a council government-appointed committee, if there is some type of notice, but you should be able to meet because it is less than a quorum of the committee.
Right.
So just let me know when you all are meeting. And another thing, and I'll get with you guys on it, since we have to meet in here, in the auditorium because of the camera situation and the Ustream Live, and of course, we want to show transparency in our meetings here. We may want to look at a different time. I don't know if you still want to go through lunch, or if you want to move it to like 2 or 3 o'clock in the afternoon. It may be better, because to sit up here and you can see now through the lunch hour, it went to 1:30. So just something, since if we're looking at amending, we could look at that as well. Just something to think about.
For next
or we could keep it as is.
And a point of clarification, since we don't know what Ms. Toops can do yet for the next meeting.
Right.
We do have that meeting scheduled.
We do
April
have the
13th.
April 13th, and, yeah, before we do anything, we'd just like to see if she can present, because as Mr. Lewis said, he did meet with the mayor-president, and the mayor-president said that he would allow the directors to come and speak. It's just a matter of her checking her schedule,
Right.
because we are doing a lot with budget as well now, too, so.
Another speaker, what do you guys think about Conrad Como? Is
Yeah.
there an interest in hearing anything from Conrad about where the taxes come from, and everybody in agreement with that? So we'll reach out.
We'll
to
reach out,
him,
okay.
And then we'll clarify some of this once we, yeah.
Get a
You
little
guys,
further
yeah.
in.
And freelancing is great. I mean, thank you for your time, all of you.
Sure.
Is there any other unfinished business? Anything that we should have brought up? If not, we need a motion to adjourn. I'm sure Stuart would like to. I
I
second.
move with you. That's a second.
Yeah. All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Yeah, man.
Come on, Roddy, you're too young to be grunting and groaning when you get up, man.
I got a phone for.
Is that right? Oh, man, and you flip?
I have a,
And you
we
flip?
had a,